Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Evan R. Liblit Memorial Scholarship Committee. Larry Swanson Waste on Wednesday seminar series, co-hosted in conjunction with Stony Brook University, School of Marine and Atmospheric Sciences. My name is Nat Egozi. I'm president of RRT Design and Construction. We are an engineering and construction company based here on Long Island, and we design and build recycling facilities across the country and into Canada. And I'm pleased to serve the host of today's webinar. Before we get started, I would like to take a minute to remind everyone about the Liblit Scholarship Committee and what we do. Evan was a highly respected recycling and waste professional who passed away at the age 47 in 1995. He worked for the EPA, the DEC, as well as the town of Babylon, private sector, and also was a teacher. Notably, in the mid-'80s is when I first met Evan. He authored New York State Solid Waste Management Plan update, and very specifically is the one who pushed for and achieved the goal of establishing a 25% recycling goal for the state of New York. And this was in the 80s and has steered us through for many decades. After his passing, a number of us created a Liblit Scholarship Fund at Stony Brook University to continue his legacy. Over the past 24 years, the Scholarship Fund has provided scholarships to over 22 graduate students, 19 undergraduate students, and many of the scholarship recipients have gone on to become leaders in their field. I encourage anyone that is able to please consider supporting the Scholarship Fund. If I was in person, I'd be passing around my little tin cup to see if that was possible. Prior to COVID, SUNY Stony Brook SoMAS and the Scholarship Committee hosted a symposium at Stony Brook with a capacity crowd to discuss the recycling crisis and other important waste issues. In 2020, we adapted the symposium to Zoom webinars, and this year we are holding webinars throughout April in celebration of Earth Day events and other pressing regional and solid waste issues. This year is special. The Liblit Scholarship Committee was renamed the Waste on Wednesdays webinars in honor of Dr. Larry Swanson of Stony Brook University. As many of you know, Larry passed away late last year. His passing left a tremendous void, not only for his family, but also his Stony Brook colleagues, the countless students whom he mentored, the professional affiliations and groups across Long Island. Thank you for attending. In terms of logistics, everyone will be muted except for the speakers. If you have any questions, please enter them into the chat box on your screen, and we will try to group them together and answer them at the end of the presentations. Please note, this webinar is being recorded and will be available on Stony Brook's website, and Caitlin will be sending out a link for those who are unable to attend or those who want to review again one of the presentations. Today's webinar is entitled Recycling Initiatives and Developments in New York State. The topics to address include the New York State Legislature's proposal for enhanced producer responsibility for packaging and paper products, as well as a discussion on the subject, a video tour of Winter Brothers' recently upgraded material recovery facility in the town of Brookhaven, an overview of Recycle Right New York, an education and outreach program started by DEC and redeveloped by Syracuse University. Future webinars, April 21st on food waste recycling, April 28th, transportation of waste. All webinars are free. It is my pleasure to introduce our first speaker, Andrew Radin. Andrew is Director of Recycling and Waste Reduction for Onondaga County, New York, which is the county for the city of Syracuse. Onondaga County, New York Resource Recovery Agency, I should say, and has 30 years of professional solid waste management experience. He administers the community's award-winning recycling program, Recycle First, including Okra's recycling education efforts and its business relationship with the local private material recovery facility. He has served on the board of numerous professional material management organizations, including NYSAR, the New York State Association of Reduction, Reuse, and Recycling. He currently serves as the board chair of the New York Product Stewardship Council, where he has been involved in advancing a variety of extended producer responsibility initiatives, including electronic waste, paint stewardship, and product packaging. And with that, Andrew is going to present on the subject of EPR. Thank you.
Matt, thank you. Eric Swanson, thanks for inviting me. And Assemblyman Engelbray, thank you for your leadership in creating the sustainable materials management economy of the future in New York State through your support in advancing EPR in New York and through the legislature. Thank you. Next slide, please. So, extended producer responsibility, EPR, is all about setting a new course for recycling in New York State. Currently, consumer brand owners are disconnected from the end-of-life management of their product packaging. EPR is going to change that. We need consumer brand owners to be involved in the recovery and the recycling of the 1.5 million tons of consumer product packaging and printed paper coming from our homes every year. So here are three key elements of an EPR system. One, it's going to establish a dedicated non-taxpayer funded system. Currently, taxpayers cover 100% of the cost to recycle. EPR is going to better align recycling costs with those who benefit from the sale and purchase of consumer goods. Two, municipalities will no longer be vulnerable to the inherent risk and volatility of the global commodity markets for plastic and metal and fiber. And three, EPR is going to incentivize brand owners to reduce their packaging waste and design for recycling and reuse. Next slide, please. EPR is about shifting responsibility from local governments to product producers. Producers will be responsible for financing and managing the recovery of their product packaging at the end of its useful life. The costs for recovery and recycling will be built into the product price and become part of a company's cost of doing business. Producers currently externalize those costs for product packaging and recycling that material onto municipalities. EPR will internalize the cost to the product manufacturers and the cost of reducing environmental externalities. Next slide. So I want to emphasize that under an EPR system, no money goes to the state. This is not about new taxes. What will happen is that under the law, under the program, a not-for-profit PRO, Product Responsibility Organization, sets and collects the fees from the consumer brand owners. And the funding that's generated covers the cost of residential and public space recycling by reimbursing municipalities for the cost to collect recyclables from our home, for the municipal costs to process and sort curbside recyclables at the material recovery facilities, we call them MRFs, and also for the public education costs to educate people to recycle right, and for investing in modernizing and recycling our state's recycling infrastructure. Next slide, please. So how does curbside recycling work now? What happens is brand owners sell their products to the consumers, but then that's kind of the end of the line for them right now. And then we as taxpayers or recycling system ratepayers take over and pay the municipality or the hauler to pick up and collect the materials and then take it to the MRF that processes the materials and bales them, sorts them, bales them, markets them, and that's all funded through a taxpayer system. That's how it currently works. And here's how recycling will work with EPR. We as consumers pay the brand owners when we purchase the products. The brand owners will pay fees into the Product Responsibility Organization, the PRO, and it's the PRO that will reimburse the municipality or the hauler for collection and also for the cost to process the materials at the local material recovery facility, the MRF. There are EPR laws that for packaging and printed paper, that's the PPP, packaging and printed paper, that are currently in the New York State legislature. And the key provisions would create that PRO to manage the program, but also the law would create an advisory board to advise the PRO on how to best implement the system. And the advisory board would be comprised of stakeholders in the current system. It would include municipalities. It would include haulers. It would include MRFs and representatives from environmental organizations. So there would be strong involvement of other key players in the system in a new EPR system for New York State. And there would also be strong state oversight of the DEC of the program, because the program would have to propose a plan. The producers would have to propose a product management plan to the DEC. DEC would have to review and approve that plan. So strong state oversight of the system. Next slide, please. Just a few other key provisions. I had mentioned that EPR is going to provide incentives to reduce product packaging. That's through a system called eco-modulation. Manufacturers who reduce their product packaging, who make their product packaging more recyclable, easier to recycle, they pay lower fees into the system, and that's what's known as eco-modulation. And also PRO would provide the recycling collection to all New York State residents, that it would have to be as convenient of what they're currently experiencing for waste. And the PRO would also be responsible for education and outreach about what is recyclable. There would be a reasonable reimbursement rate established to reimburse municipalities for their costs for collection and processing, and the PROs would be responsible for modernizing the recycling infrastructure. Also, there would be some uniformity established across the state of what can be recycled across New York. So there would be a minimum statewide recyclables list developed that the PRO would propose in consultation with the advisory board and approval of the DEC. Next slide, please. So as I said, the bill status has been proposed, Senate Bill 1185B by Senator Kaminsky and Assembly Bill 5801 by Assemblyman Engelbray. So those are now under consideration in the New York State Legislature. And we are hopeful and cautiously optimistic that this bill will become law and will be signed by the governor before the end of this session. We really need this new program, new recycling management program, to be installed this year. Next slide, please. Just to give a quick overview of what is experienced in the wake of EPR programs in other countries and provinces in Canada. And you can see that the recycling rate increases in the wake of an EPR system. Primarily due, I think, to the increased and improved public education that's provided by the product manufacturers. The Procter & Gamble's and the Unilevers, these are the folks who are really experts in marketing. I think that the municipalities and the local governments have really done a great job in trying to educate their residents about what is recyclable and how to recycle, but we have limited financial resources really to take it to the next level. And I don't think that we are necessarily the experts in the field of this kind of education, although we've tried to do our best. It's time to take it to the next level, and with the product stewardship organization, the folks who really are expert at this will take it beyond as they are responsible for public education for recycling. Next slide, please.
That's the last one I have.
Okay. Well, in that case, let me just add that, well, there we go, Eric. EPR is already well underway in New York State. We have EPR for rechargeable batteries, for mercury-containing thermostats, and also for electronic waste. And in the 10 years that we've had EPR for electronics, we've collected over 700 million pounds of unwanted electronics, kept that out of the trash, and have been able to reuse or recycle those materials. And coming down the pike in 2022 is EPR for pharmaceutical take-back and also for paint stewardship. So we are not really through the looking glass, folks, on this type of system. We've already implemented some EPR programs here in New York State. Again, in many cases, thanks to the leadership of Assemblyman Engelbray to move things forward. And paint and drug take-back is coming online next year. Next slide, please. So on the horizon for the future, EPR for mattresses and carpeting, hopefully an update to that e-waste law on its 10th anniversary, also EPR for alkaline batteries to join the existing rechargeable battery collection program, and also for packaging and printed paper. And next slide is my last one. So in setting a new course for recycling in New York State through an EPR system, we envision increased material recovery rates, additional green sector jobs, and infrastructure investment in our aging recycling system, and less packaging waste, less greenhouse gas, and less municipal costs. This is all focused on a twofold policy goal, to really modernize and improve the existing system, and to realign costs with those that are benefiting from the sale of the consumer packaging. So it really is time to adjust the sails and set a new course for recycling in New York State. The New York Product Stewardship Council and many, many others have joined with us in strongly supporting Senate Bill 1185B and Assemblyman Engelbray's Bill 5801. Nat, thank you.
Andrew, thank you very much. Great job kicking this off discussion on, once again, another acronym, EPR, Extended or Enhanced Producer Responsibility. And we have another acronym, which is the PPP, Packaging and Paper Products. And with that, it's my great pleasure to introduce Assemblyman Mr. Engelbray, Steve Engelbray, who will provide us a presentation discussion on the proposed EPR legislation that he's sponsoring. Assemblyman Engelbray was elected in 1992 to represent the 4th Assembly District, which includes the 3-village area and other parts of Northwest Brookhaven here on Long Island. He is a geologist by training and is the only natural scientist serving the New York State Legislature. As chair of the Assembly Committee on Environmental Conservation, Engelbray's focus in government has been to advance an agenda that protects public health, safeguards the environment, and creates a sustainable, carbon-free energy economy. Significant legislation passed during Assemblyman Engelbray's tenure includes the Solar Choice Act, which provides for solar net metering in New York State, and the Climate Leadership and Community Preservation Act. This act requires New York to get all of its electricity from carbon-free energy sources by 2040 and reach net zero emissions economy-wide by 2050. Steve Engelbray is on the faculty of the Sustainability Studies program at Stony Brook University. He received his BS from the University of Tennessee in 1969 and has a master's in geology from Stony Brook. Assemblyman Engelbray, thank you for being here today.
Well, thank you for inviting me. And this is an important forum each year. We greatly miss Larry Swanson's leadership in the continuing quest for a cleaner environment. He was so critically important, not only for this seminar, but for a host of other environmental initiatives around our region. And I deeply miss my dear friend, Larry Swanson, and I know we all respect the legacy that is being carried forward in part through this seminar. And so thank you for allowing me to be a part of this first major seminar since his passing. So just to take a kind of a big picture view, this is a seminar within the School of Marine and Atmospheric Sciences. Why is it relevant to marine sciences? Well, let me point out that at the beginning of the last century, all of the salt marshes on Long Island were pristine. By the time we got to the 1970s, we had lost 70% of these natural nurseries for our fisheries due to landfilling activities, primarily from solid waste. That was the preferred disposal mechanism to place garbage on marshes. That didn't happen until the harvesting of salt hay sort of was no longer an economic imperative because the great plains of our nation had been pioneered, and farms were sending wheat back, and other grains were being used other than salt hay for food and forage. So the salt marshes were viewed as waste themselves, and of course, placing waste on them didn't at the time, I suppose, seem to be harmful. By the time we get to the 1970s, however, the leading environmental initiative was to preserve our salt marshes. We saw state law developed that did that. So there is a connection back. Take a look, if you will, at Myron Fuller's map of the geology of Long Island, published by the U.S. Geological Survey in 1914, and take a look at modern aerial photographs, and you'll see that in some places around Jamaica Bay, for example, you are almost a mile and a half from the shore where you're able to see multi-story buildings put on top of what used to be the living marsh. So there's a direct connection historically between the issue of solid waste and the issue of environmental protection, and particularly of the marine environment. And I just want to point out that when the marshes were protected by state law, they then moved to put the landfills in the Pine Barrens and in our interiors on Long Island. And that, of course, had a limited life because of limited space. And we're now at a point where in 3 years, the largest remaining landfill, the Brookhaven town landfill, is going to be forced to close. It's running out of space. And indeed, suburban sprawl and other developments. This is, after all, an island. It is finite. And we are about to realize our limits. It's within that context that the loss of markets for recycling materials about 2 years ago in China really created a crisis. And we've been moving in a sort of a fitful way over a number of years now toward trying to discipline the waste stream. When I was a county legislator almost 30 years ago, I introduced legislation to ban certain types of plastic packaging. And unfortunately, the commercial activities around that issue at the time, many of the manufacturers came to my colleagues. This is, I went to the state legislature by way of a special election. We had just finished the passage of the plastics ban in Suffolk County. When I went to Albany, the manufacturers played a siren song of trust us, make it voluntary, change the law. Engelbright's not here. Change the law and make it voluntary. And the plastic packaging and the plastic materials for fast food and disposable use will be recycled voluntarily, and will lead the way. And of course, that did not happen. And so I have a great interest in working with producers, but I do have a certain degree of caution based on experience. they did not live up to their promise. And the Suffolk law was not as a voluntary, when they modified it and made it voluntary, was not very effective. Now we're looking at the possibility of having to deal with this in a continuing escalating crisis. The barge Mobro, which toured the Western hemisphere here some years ago and caused us great humiliation when I remember Johnny Carson making fun of the wandering garbage barge, was just a preview and a small capsule of what is about to come at us if we don't deal with this. And so it was within that context in January of this year when my colleague Todd Kaminsky, Senator Kaminsky is of course from Long Beach, also from Long Island, when Todd called me and said, Steve, I'm interested in laying down a marker to basically indicate that the Senate and Assembly are going to work together to begin to have a truly effective bill and law to bring relief to our municipal jurisdictions and to save our taxpayers' money. Are you in with me? And I said, I realize that the bill needs some work, but I would like that message to be sent. I said, Senator, I'm in with you. Let us introduce the bill as you suggest early in the session and put down a marker to indicate that we are in fact very serious and that it is in the interest of a priority for the chairs of both the Senate and Assembly committees on the environment. And so we introduced the bill, and that is a commitment that we made to work with our municipal partners. By the way, Andrew Radin's presentation was excellent. Thank you for that. That was just a superb summary of what our goals are in this moment. And so, of course, the legislative session is like a basketball game. It has a first half and a second half. And in the first half, we concentrate on the spending plan for the state for the next year, sometimes beyond just the first year. For example, one of the things that we did in this session's first half was authorize an environmental bond act, which will be put forward in next year for the voters to consider for $3 billion. We also reauthorized $15.3 million to support municipal recycling in this year's Environmental Protection Fund. And we continued the Environmental Protection Fund at a $300 million authorization. So we had a few other things going on, as you all followed the news, and it was an interesting and exciting first half. And we concluded our budget last week. Once again, Senator Kaminsky reached out to me and he said, this is just in the last few days, he said, okay, we've gone through the first part of the year and now the next part lies before us. Shouldn't we begin to talk at the staff level to refine this bill? And I agreed with him again. And indeed, we have a scheduled meeting by Zoom later this afternoon with key staff members, and we're going to, now that the budget is done, we're going to make this a priority. I haven't shared this with the Senator yet, but I believe that we need a hearing. We'll see whether everybody else who's going to be at the staff and senior level of policy agrees with that. But my inclination right now would be to take a hard look at the Canadian model to see what we can learn from Europe, and to avoid as many missteps as possible. Now, we're going to have missteps. This is such a complicated topic. In fact, we did not intend to create a crisis with all of the newspapers of the state when we put in our bill. But when the newspapers, by the way, they recycle something between 60 and 68% of newsprint right now, and are far ahead of any of the other categories of waste. And at a time when certain actors in the national scene have been systematically attacking newspapers, it was unfortunate that many of the newspapers felt very threatened, particularly the weeklies, by our introduction of these bills. And earlier this week, Senator Kaminsky indicated that he did not believe that we should continue to try to capture newspapers in the same way that we need to capture packaging waste and other paper and plastic parts of the waste stream. Packaging accounts for something like 40% of the waste stream right now. And that's where the Senator and I are going to be focusing our attention. We're going to need help, and we're going to need the help from the people who are in this Zoom call. And we are going to need help by trying not to reinvent the wheel, but to look to see, as I indicated, what has been accomplished in other countries. And as Andrew Radin indicated, we have already established some parts of the EPR methodology. I was a sponsor of the paint recycling initiative that passed almost 2 years ago now. So as we begin the second half of the session, we're running out of time. The session clock will close us down for passage of a final work product by late June. And so I encourage you all to stay engaged with my office, certainly, and I'm sure Senator Kaminsky as well. And we're going to try to hammer and shape this into a meaningful piece of legislation to address really comprehensively, for the first time, the question of where the waste comes from is where a lot of the focus needs to be, and not just place all of the responsibility at the local municipal level. We need some discipline in this. And particularly, I'm focused on plastics in the waste stream, and the numerous different species of plastics make recycling very difficult because you can't commingle many of those. You can't mix some of the halogen-based plastics in with polyethylene and expect that they're going to be a coherent recyclable. And that's in part why we lost our markets in China, because we didn't have standardization that led to the bales of plastic being of just one species. We need to start to think about that and cause our manufacturers, more importantly, to think about that. So as I close my comments here, I just want to mention one of the things that we did in the budget. We authorized, at my request, a sum of money for the Department of Environmental Conservation to read you the language. 250,000, it's a line item in the budget. 200, it's in the Environmental Protection Fund. $250,000 for regional municipal solid waste management and waste transport planning, including for impacted environmental justice communities. So the DEC, which has lost almost a third of its personnel within this last decade, just is not going to be able to do much unless we give them some additional help. Each year I ask the commissioner in the budget hearings, do you need help? He says, no, we're fine, which is what a good soldier is supposed to do, I suppose, because the governor has been pretty frugal, let's say, and has not filled empty positions adequate for the agency to do its job. So we put some money in to the budget, and I encourage you all to be in touch with the DEC and to make best use of the regional municipal solid waste management planning possibility that this line item in the budget is intended to enable. So as I close, I just want to say public education is going to be an important part of all of this. We need to communicate with our public, and if the public is with us, everything is possible. And this entire initiative will be successful. As we adjust our sails, I like that image for the voyage here. I look forward to working with all of you as we go forward. Thank you again for inviting me here today.
Thank you very much, Assemblyman Engelbray, for a very inspiring and captivating presentation on a compelling topic, EPR. Certainly a measure that will help fund efforts across all consumers, since all generate waste. And here on Long Island, without a landfill per se, extremely vital. And then throughout New York State, it is essentially moving in the same direction with the depleting landfill resources. Shifting gears here a little bit, we have another treat besides the presentations on EPR. We have a treat of Winter Brothers' tour of their recycling facility and the town of Brookhaven's recycling facility. That's going to be narrated and put together by Mr. Jeff Nella. Unfortunately, Jeff's not able to join us today. He's traveling en route on business, but I'll just introduce Jeff very briefly, as he has 25 years of experience in capital equipment design, sales, and operations. And for the past 12 years, he's been focused in the waste industry across multiple waste streams, different types of waste. He's worked for the two largest equipment system providers in the industry. He spent 2 years doing operational audits and equipment evaluations. And currently he is with Winter Brothers, managing the recycling operations and in particular, the town of Brookhaven, Murph. He has a finance degree in Villanova University. And for those that have not been to the town of Brookhaven, probably difficult because of COVID, the opportunity now is to actually go to the town of Brookhaven, Murph, and we're going to see a video here narrated by Jeff, walking us through the facility, one of the largest facilities on Long Island, and certainly one of the most updated facilities. Eric?
Thank you all for taking the time and interest in
Perfect.
watching a short video of the Brookhaven Material Recovery Facility operated by Winters Brothers. Recently, this facility underwent a fairly large retrofit to accommodate the dual stream collection process change. The system now much more efficiently and effectively recovers the commodities or recyclables from the stream. We are currently receiving close to 2,500 tons per month of material at this site. We are segregating that material into its individual commodities that have value, and then marketing those commodities to make sure that they have a second life cycle. We're going to start this presentation or video tour looking at the commingled container system. Material is collected at the residences via traditional trucks that you are all comfortable and familiar seeing. Those trucks are driven to our facility where they unload the material on our tip floor. We do a very quick cursory look to make sure that there isn't excessive contamination before we then further process. The material you're currently seeing right now is what you and all of your neighbors throw in your recycle bins on your commingled container week. We also receive material via trailer, which just is a way of us to be a little bit more efficient in the transportation of the material to the site. Attracting ferrous metals repels.
Realize the volume here is low. What we're looking at is an optical sorter here, sorting paper. This is a quality control station here. Just provide some voiceover here, given the difficulty of the video. We're looking at an overhead belt magnet here, pulling out ferrous metal. This is the eddy current separator. Automatically separates non-ferrous metal, aluminum cans, cat food cans, foils.
Forklift driver loading a truck of ferrous metals as destined.
Of course, here is the baler baling up PET bottles, as you can see coming through. And right behind it is steel food cans. Those materials will go straight to market off of Long Island to the various, in case of steel, it'll go to a steel mill. And they're typically shipped in van trailers like this. Loaded by fork truck stacked.
Utilize the equipment as best as we possibly can. We initially do a pre-sort where we
So Long Island is largely a dual stream program. So this is now the fiber side of the system. And you can see the amount of cardboard here is significantly grown over the last decade. There's the infeed with the drum feeder, metering the material to the system. Front end loader loads up this hopper and the material is fed and metered up to the pre-sorters that are removing contamination. You can see them removing plastic film and other plastic bags and other types of material that are not fiber products that would be considered contamination to any paper mill. After that, it goes through a screen that separates the larger materials, which are the cardboard, from the smaller flexible materials that fall through the openings, which are being used. And there's a segment of it being fed to the system. Material being fed. This device unclumps the material and liberates it and provides a uniform amount of material to feed to the screen. And as those shafts rotate, it moves the material forward and allows the smaller material to fall through, the larger being separated by size, which is the cardboard. And here is the larger material, the cardboard coming off. Largely all cardboard, but with some contamination that needs to be cleaned up, which is what this individual here would be doing. Cleaned up to basically remove non-paper products. And this is a final screen here to pull out any small pieces of glass, shards, and other items that for a paper mill, it's a real problem. They can't accept any glass in their production. Another screen here to do more screen and remove more contaminants. A lot of screening is what you see in the immerse, some manual sorting for quality control. Screens only can separate based on size and the three-dimensional characteristics of the material. Here we've got eyeballs looking at it and doing the manual sorting. And then this last step here is an automation using optical sorters that can scan and identify objects and then separate them. So it's pneumatically ejecting material Get there. Another quality control step in the effort by Winter Brothers to produce bales that are marketable and accepted by paper mills.
Thank you for taking the time and the interest in learning a little bit more about what happens to your material and recycling.
So thanks for that. I think that brings us to the end of the video. Apologize for the sound, but I think the images were good, and my voiceover was an attempt to explain without being prepared to do so. So I think I got it right, but Will Flower from Winter Brothers is on, and if you have any questions, we can circle back to those. So thank you, Winter Brothers, for pulling that together for us today. We are now going to have a short, I want to say, presentation or discussion by Ken Armelino. Ken is currently Director of Sustainability at Covanta, which operates 4 waste energy facilities here on Long Island. And Ken is a professional engineer here in New York, graduated from Polytech University with a degree in civil engineering, and has been with Covanta and as well as his prior predecessor company, American Rail Fuel, for 32 years. Importantly, he is the representative and treasurer for NYSAR, as well as the secretary for the New York Product Stewardship Council. Ken?
Thank you. And I promise to be brief. As Nat said, I am the Chapter 1 Long Island representative and treasurer for the New York State Association for Reduction, Reuse, and Recycling, also known as NYSAR 3. NYSAR 3 works hard to ensure New York State keeps the 3 Rs as robust as possible. In recent years, NYSAR 3 helped have legislation passed relative to e-waste, pharmaceuticals, rechargeable batteries, mercury, and paint. Currently, through our strong partnership with the New York State Product Stewardship Council, we're working on paper and packaging EPR, as well as an update to the e-waste law, primary batteries, carpets, and mattresses. Unfortunately, within NYSAR, Long Island has been underrepresented. Of the almost 200 members statewide of NYSAR, less than 10 are from the Long Island chapter. As we all know, Long Island is unique, and NYSAR wants to be sure that the issues this uniqueness presents are strongly represented. So I ask that you please consider joining. Only $70 a year gets you your reduced rates at not only NYSAR's conferences, webinars, and summits, including next week's Organic Summit, but also at Federation, SWANA, and NYSA-SWAM events. So much so it pays for itself after only 1 or 2 of these events. Our newsletter is pretty informative. We also have great opportunities for we also have grant opportunities for K through 12 schools and member colleges. We're an affiliate of the NRC, so you'd be a member of that as well. We offer many other networking opportunities, including a pretty active and robust Google group. So I ask you, please consider joining. If you do have any questions, you can contact me at chapter1@nysar3.org. I'll put that in the chat if anyone wants to email as well, along with our website. And that's it. So thank you. I hope to see the membership start rolling in, and enjoy the rest of the seminar.
Ken, thanks very much.
Pleasure.
And thanks for volunteering, serving on these various organizations to help move New York State. It's with pleasure now to introduce Melissa Young. Melissa is the Assistant Director of Syracuse University Center for Sustainable Community Solutions, and has more than 13 years of experience working on water and waste-related programs. She is currently on the board of NYSAR 3, and previously served on the board for NRC, National Recycling Coalition. Melissa has led various state initiatives to advance sustainable management, including Recyclo the New York, an EPA award-winning New York State Textile Recovery Campaign, and the New York State Organic Summit. She has received a Master of Science from SUNY College of Environmental Science and Forestry, and a bachelor's from Binghamton University. Melissa is going to be covering a topic which is important to us, which is really helping communities recycle better by providing assistance in education, greater awareness of what's recyclable and what's not. So Melissa, welcome and thank you for joining us today.
Thanks so much. I just have a couple of slides. I know we're already at 1 o'clock, so I will be quick with it. So again, hi, I'm Melissa Young with Syracuse University. I'm also co-PI of the new New York State Center for Sustainable Materials Management, and I'm here to talk specifically about Recycle Right New York. Recycle Right New York is a campaign that is made possible in collaboration with the New York State DEC and the SUNY ESF new, again, New York State Center for Sustainable Materials Management, and a core stakeholder group of 100 plus recycling professionals from throughout New York State who have been part of the campaign, who essentially created the campaign since 2018. It was launched as a result of a series of recycling stakeholder meetings in 2018 that were focused on addressing challenges facing New York's recycling system, and the management was transitioned to the center, the new New York State Center, and my team in 2020. We all know that recycling guidelines vary across the state, and we want to help make people know before they throw. That's our tagline that we created with our stakeholders. So we're working to provide more consistent messaging about materials, shifting away from the when in doubt, throw it out tagline, more towards the know before you throw. We hope to help prevent non-recyclables from being put into recycling systems. We just watched that great video from Winter Brothers. We don't want to see those systems damaged. We don't want to see workers injured anymore. And the materials, the value decreased. And so we are hoping to point people throughout New York State, from Montauk to Buffalo to Plattsburgh, in the right direction and to know there is local recycling guidelines. The website that we are launching is going to be the critical first step and will include public outreach. Through the website, we're hoping to increase and improve recycling participation, decrease confusion and the contamination. And really the goal is to help recycling coordinators and managers communicate to their residents. So like others have said on this call, on this meeting, local governments are strapped for resources. So we're hoping to help them in many ways. We want to increase the number of good recyclers and increase the percentage of material that can be recycled and marketed. The website will feature information about recycling processes, benefits, myths, best practices. We'll have interactive online tools for finding local recycling guidelines, a recyclopedia to find specific items, many of which, because of the variation, will send people to their local guidelines page. We'll have downloadable educational materials that we will continuously create new materials for. We will have that also available in Spanish. We will continue to develop additional tools such as locator maps. In partnership with the center, we'll be working on in-person engagement outreach activities when we are able to do that kind of work. Again, the website launches on Earth Day, April 22nd, 1 week from today. This year's Earth Day theme is to restore our Earth. And so, in sum, our goal is to make recycling easier to understand and more simple to do for people. And we hope to shift the perception that used materials are not waste to be discarded, but resources to be recovered. Please check out our social media outreach. We've already launched our Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Like our pages, share our posts with your contacts, encourage family and friends to do the same. And, really New Yorkers working together, we're hoping to accelerate the state to be the lowest waste producing state in the country and a model for sustainable materials management for the rest of the nation. And that's it.
Melissa, thank you very much. And as everybody can see, we're attacking the waste problem and continue to from many different prongs, education, the EPR, upgrading physical infrastructure, and seeking different ways of assisting municipalities as well as the private sector. And speaking on that, Eric, if you could throw up the slide on the Federation, is another opportunity that we have here in New York. Eric, you want to put that up there, and I'll just speak to it for a minute here. So while you're reading that and you get a context of what that's all about, in the interest of time, we're going to move on to some of the questions that we've got in the chat room here. And the bulk of them revolve around the EPR. And Andrew, I'm going to call on you a little bit to help out. So very quickly on some of these questions is EPR and I see Assemblyman Engelbray is on the phone. Residential only or also applicable to commercial? Andrew?
Oh, thanks, Nat. So I did put a response in the chat on this, and I stated that the two current bills, 1185B and Assembly Bill 5801, really address the unique and pressing challenges of the residential system. Local governments are generally less directly engaged in the business and institutional materials, including the cost for the recovery and the processing of those recyclables generated in the private sector. So an EPR system for business materials would have a variety of different considerations than compared to the residential system. It's not just as simple as, well, that both business sector and residential sector generate the same materials. It's more complex than that. So what I'm suggesting is an EPR system for business materials would have a variety of different considerations that could best be addressed through a commercial focused piece of legislation.
Gotcha. Thank you. Next question. I know some of these are on the chat that others can see, but not everybody is able to see the chats since these is being recorded. Implementation schedule. What kind of time frame are we really looking at here to phase these things in? What is the thought process that is being suggested?
Current legislation calls for a 4-year phase-in, which would start with a really very, I think, comprehensive needs analysis across the state in terms of collection and processing and infrastructure. But in terms of the actual startup date would be about 4 years down the road. Very
good. Thank you. Next question revolves around pricing to the consumer. So as was pointed out, people recycle if they want to, even though they're supposed to, and then the others don't. And meanwhile, the municipality is picking up the entire tab for the whole solid waste program and all the collateral damage that comes along with it. This shifts some of the economics such that the consumer who's buying the product, whether they recycle or not, they're paying for into this fund. How is this going to affect the price of these products? Or are they going to go up a penny, 1%, 2%, 3%? What's any thoughts there?
It's more like a fraction of a penny, because the cost that would be built in to the consumer packaging or the consumer goods would be spread out over so many thousands and thousands of consumer goods that it ends up being a fraction of a cent per item, almost to the point of being negligible on a per product basis. That's how it's worked elsewhere.
Yeah, what's exciting or interesting about it is it touches everybody, whether they're a good recycler or the recycling right or not. It doesn't matter. Everybody's paying into it, so to speak. Similar to like school systems, everybody pays taxes whether you have children in the school or not. Another question was, how will its effectiveness be measured? How do we know we're actually doing the right thing? How will it be measured?
The bill requires the PRO or the PROs to report to the DEC on an annual basis in terms of recovery rates and recycled content and product packaging, and moving that issue forward. And if objectives are not being achieved, the DEC can require the PRO to change the plan to improve those elements.
Great. You know your stuff. Good stuff. Well, thank you, Andrew. That pretty much wraps up all the questions that we had that we'd like to cover today, and we're over our time limit here. So thanks again for attending, and for those that want to hear or see this again, feel free to access the recorded webinar. Caitlin provided that in the chat room, and she'll be emailing that out. And just as a reminder, on April 21st, food waste recycling, we'll see you then, hopefully, as well as on the 28th with regard to transportation of waste. And thank you again for attending Larry Swanson Waste on Wednesdays, sponsored by the Evan R. Liblit Memorial Scholarship Fund. Thank you.